So this right here, this is now officially the highest paid cornerback in the National Football League. Now the numbers down there might look a bit extreme, but trust me, in his 4 years in the league, he's earned every single penny of this contract. 2-time All-Pro honors, really no matter what lens you look at it through, arguably the best all-around coverage ability that you're going to find in the entire sport. And oh yeah, the Rams also just moved mountains to get him in their building. They even decided to one-up themselves by signing his out-wide running mate from Kansas City right alongside him. So now that begs the question, why did LA do this? I mean, statistically speaking from an overall standpoint, the Rams were a top 5 defense in football without these two in the equation. The front line did the majority of the heavy lifting, and Chris Shula worked his magic around the edges. If you were forced to sit down and pick out a single weakness on this defense, the Rams didn't just address it, they made it their X factor.
3rd and 14, starting the second. Purdy steps away from the heat, heaves it, and it's knocked away at the last moment. Oh boy, McDuffie.
This is a touchdown, but you're attacking the first team All-Pro. What a great job by McDuffie of timing that.
So what exactly do I mean when I refer to this aspect of their defense as a weakness? Well, more so, I'm referring to their playstyle from last season. Now through and through, Chris Shula led this secondary to be a cover 3 based system. Most teams in the league operate in this manner, and Los Angeles was no different in being right around the average mark in their use of this coverage. But what this team typically used aside from the foundation of their scheme is what I'm getting at when I say this. That, and who they had playing on the boundaries for them. Cover 3 was undeniably the 1A option, but not too far behind it was a heavy use specifically of cover 2.
1st and 15. Jones heaves it for Pittman on the sideline. Intercepted! Kam Curl's done it again! His second pick of the day!
Now why, on an interception by Kam Curl at the safety position, am I choosing to highlight and focus on the boundary corners in this room? Trent McDuffie and Jaylen Watson are quite literally polar opposites of how the Rams have played in the secondary. Not just because of their technique when playing the position, but a ton of that difference we're talking about solely has to do with their alignment. That number on your screen, as insane as it is, somehow isn't a typo. Extremely close quarters enforcing tight windows in the pass game is what powered the engine for this Kansas City defense. Just look at the numbers side by side when you compare them to the Rams last year. You don't succeed, and you sure as hell don't use this style of a coverage if you're not comfortable with your personnel doing so. Watch Trent McDuffie going up against this 18-yard inbreaker from Brian Thomas over the middle of the field. Now keep just that route in mind off the snap, because the coverage call for the defense behind it looks like it could be cover 1 man. And based on that one high safety currently sitting on the opposite hash, McDuffie is basically on his own island here. Right off the release, you'll see that he stays firm, but then he gives Brian Thomas both the inside and even the vertical leverage. Whether it was intentional or not, he's pretty clearly baiting Trevor Lawrence to attempt to throw in his direction. He stays glued to BTJ's hip and mirrors the break inside perfectly.
Going on, but there was nowhere to put this ball. In order to catch it for Brian Thomas, this ball was going to have to be absolutely perfect, and it was close. I mean, you had to lead him, but that's just excellent, excellent work by McDuffie.
Go back and watch the reps from either of these two last year. You are going to be hard-pressed to find more physical cornerback play from anyone in the sport. And yes, it is nothing short of the epitome of a high-risk, high-reward playstyle. But that's also exactly why we led off this video, going into deeper detail of how we might actually see Chris Shula make an effort to flip that script for his team on the football field. Now the Rams, they typically wanted to avoid those press-heavy, de facto man-to-man scenarios for their boundary corners. Not because they were, for lack of a better way to put it I guess, incompetent in doing so. It just wouldn't have made sense to rely on it often, seeing that it clearly was not the strength of their secondary. And right on cue, that is also where the conversation of their cover 2 use comes back into the equation. Look at this play for an example. The DB goes and tails the crossfield motion. You've got hard press alignment from both the backs out wide once everything across the board settles. What you're currently looking at, it screams some kind of man-to-man coverage to a quarterback. But rather than pray his guys win those one-on-ones, dropping into zones and using their vision to make plays seemed to be the fitting formula. And it makes sense why they did so. Because Chris Shula time and time again has preached the concept of working to fit their scheme away from the cons and towards the pros of his players. And I mean, having a cornerback that can start at the snap 6 yards off his assignment, then take his initial step in the wrong direction of the break of the route, and still have the ability to recover in record time to insert himself into the window. That level of consistent lockdown ability at the position, it just wasn't in the cards for them last year. Now all of a sudden, over a 4-year span since way back when he entered the league, you've got not just one, but 2 of the borderline top 10 corners in this manner at your disposal.
McDuffie's made some fine plays in that secondary.
Yeah, he's the first team All-Pro, and we're trying to throw at him consistently, and it's like, look, he runs the route for him. We've done enough games. McDuffie and Snead win more often than the wide receivers do.
Now plays like that, they are exactly why I wanted to make this video. We briefly saw from that still shot before the snap that it looked like the Chiefs were in a cover 2 man call. And Trent McDuffie, he knows full well that he has both of those 2 high safeties kind of serving as the backline defense for any deep balls over the top. And because of this, you'll notice yet again, like we saw a little bit earlier, he intentionally lets his man get out ahead of him just to be able to cover that route in a trail technique. If he does end up extending that route deep, the safety's all over it. And if the route breaks off low, you've got pretty much every inch of the leverage. And if you want to talk about aligning that style of cornerback play with the rest of this roster, that is where this conversation gets even more interesting. Now, Quentin Lake, Kam Curl, even Kamren Kinchens if you want to go all the way across the board here. To keep it simple, these 3 really set the foundation for how this secondary looked to attack their opponents. And the number 1 weapon for them? Reading the field and using their IQ to not only make those big plays, but even flip a good amount of these games entirely. Just think of it this way. They were heavily based out of zone coverage last year and prioritized feeding routes as much as they could into the teeth of their safeties. And you know, what better way to illustrate that point than to backtrack to a cover 2 example? Now, when you zoom out bigger picture to look at everything going on, this is technically a split field cover 6 call, but we're keeping all of our attention up top on that cover 2 side. Specifically Kam Kinchens, who's in a deep half assignment covering both a vertical down the sideline and a bender over midfield. Right off the snap, you're going to see that he blatantly turns his hips in JSN's direction, but you'll also notice that he didn't tunnel vision. He set the trap and kept his eyes on the quarterback.
1st and 20. Darnold zips one, and it's his 3rd interception. Kinchens with his 2nd of the day. Kamren Kinchens back to the 26. His 2nd 2-interception game against Seattle in his 2 years in the league.
Now, yet again, you might be asking me what a play like that has to do with these 2. Well, with 2 of the top lockdown corners, that extra safety layer in the coverage isn't always needed. Chris Shula showed us a fair amount of times over the course of last season that he's not one to shy away from throwing a wild card out there for a play call. He doesn't do so by volume, but he calculates these gambles to strike at the most unexpected time for an offense. And McDuffie and Watson, they practically fit that kind of criteria like a glove. And it's not only the fact that they're both extremely viable blitzers, but the numbers tell you that they're even 2 of the best tackling corners in all of football. Game on the line, you got to get a stop. $175 million for your top 2 corners. You could say that kind of money's steep. But I would also counter that in saying, I think Rams fans know how critical of an asset that can be.
Noel comes back next to Stroud, tries to turn the corner, and he won! Driven back by Jaylen Watson.
That may be the best form tackle I've seen in 10 years. Arms wrapped up, lift him off the ground side.
3rd and goal, they're going to run out of the gun. Swift, can he get to the edge? He hurdles, he's knocked out of the air by Quentin Lake. What a hit by Lake.
As Darius Williams went low, Lake goes high. It is 4th and goal.
Now, the reason I touch on their similarities is because of how interchangeable everyone now is with their roles in the secondary. You don't trade what LA did and give up the kind of money we saw to a player like McDuffie without assuming the majority of his reps will be holding down the boundary for this defense. But that's also sure as hell not to say that he still won't get those occasional looks every now and then from the nickel. Because this Rams defense, they don't overwhelm to create their pressure. They do it by manipulating. And these two additions, they are fuel to the fire of what's arguably Shula's top trait as a coordinator. Look at the detail in this rep against the Jaguars for an example. You've got Lake, McCullough, and even Josh Wallace crowding the line, showing all-out blitz on a first down. And then about 1, maybe 2 or so seconds off the snap, it is one of the most unhinged Tampa 2 drops you're ever going to see. But aside from everything on the back end we got going on, take a look up front to see how the pressure actually caused that chaos. Byron Young zones off as a lower level part of the coverage. Jared Verse, as he should, ends up drawing 2 in protection, and Quentin Lake gets a free rush because of it. The dominance this team showed up front, really while only rushing 4 at the quarterback, it was already head and shoulders above the majority of this league. What do you think's going to happen when these two enter into the scheme?
Of what was going on.
Big play now to the 43, Hampton the back. Here they come. Watson chasing Herbert. Got him! What a play! Sack back to the 49, losing 6. Jaylen Watson comes up with his 2nd sack of the season on the fly off the edge.
You dive through some of their film over the years, there are countless examples of ways to convince yourself why these signings within this scheme are a match made in heaven. But at the same time, like we've been mentioning, they also bring new coverage possibilities and skills to the table that this team has not had in a while. Well, that, along with what they end up doing in the draft, ultimately move the needle for this defense? Well, that's where I want to hear what you guys have to say about it. So please, let me know what you think in the comments. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.